They say blood is thicker than water, but no one tells you what happens when your own blood decides you're not worth saving. I learned that lesson on a sun-drenched highway in California, trapped in twisted metal while my brother walked away without a scratch. That was the day Sarah Sterling died, and the day Iris was born. The smell hit me first, gasoline, acrid and suffocating, mixed with the metallic tang of blood. My blood. I tried to move, but white-hot pain shot through every nerve in my body. The world came into focus in fragments, shattered glass glittering like diamonds across the dashboard, the grotesque bend of metal where the hood used to be, and through the spider-webbed windshield. The absurdly beautiful California coastline. The Pacific Ocean sparkled in the afternoon sun, waves crashing against the rocks with a gentle rhythm that seemed to mock the chaos around me. I turned my head, every muscle screaming in protest, and saw him, Ethan. My older brother, my supposed protector, was crawling out of the passenger side with nothing more than a few scratches on his perfect face. His designer shirt was barely rumpled. It didn't make sense. We'd been in the same car, experienced the same violent collision when that truck ran the red light. How was he fine while I felt like every bone in my body had been pulverized? I tried to call out to him, my voice barely a whisper against the symphony of car alarms and distant sirens. "Ethan, help me." The words scraped against my raw throat, swallowed by the wind and the sound of emergency vehicles growing closer. He must have heard me. He had to have heard me. We were only a few feet apart. I watched, my vision blurring with tears and pain, as Ethan looked back at the wreckage. Our eyes met for a brief, eternal moment. I saw him take in my situation, saw the calculation flash across his face. Then, with a slight furrow of his brow, as if mildly inconvenienced, he turned away. He actually turned away. His fingers fumbled for his phone, and I heard him speaking to the 911 operator, his voice shaking but clear. "Yes, I've been in an accident. I need help. I'm on Highway 1, near Point Doom. Please hurry." Not we. I need help. The last thing I saw before consciousness slipped away was Ethan standing by the roadside, his back to me, waiting for help that would come for him first. When I woke up, the fluorescent lights of the hospital burned my eyes. Everything was white and sterile and cold. The steady beep of monitors provided a monotonous soundtrack to my confusion. My body felt strange, disconnected, wrapped in bandages and hooked up to what seemed like a dozen machines. A breathing tube scratched at my throat, and when I tried to move, pain radiated from my abdomen so intensely that tears leaked from the corners of my eyes. I heard voices before I saw them. The familiar, clipped tones of my mother, Victoria Sterling, cut through the mechanical sounds of the ICU. "This girl is such a nuisance. Why hasn't she stabilized yet? All this noise from these machines is giving me a headache." My father's voice followed, deep and dismissive. "Where's the doctor? We need to know about Ethan's condition. He needs the best care possible." They were here. My parents were here. Despite everything, a small, pathetic part of me felt relief. They would make things better. They would ensure I got the help I needed. That's what parents did, right? The doctor entered and began explaining my condition. Multiple fractures, internal bleeding, severe trauma, and then the words that would change everything. "I'm afraid Miss Sterling has lost one kidney due to the trauma. It was too damaged to save. However, the remaining kidney is functioning well, and with proper care." My mother's voice, sharp as a blade, cut him off. "Take the other one." Silence. Even the machines seemed to pause. "Excuse me?" The doctor's voice was carefully neutral, professional confusion evident. "You heard me. Take her other kidney. Ethan needs it. He has a congenital condition that's been worsening. This is perfect timing. She's already opened up, isn't she? Just take it and give it to my son." The world stopped. My heart monitor must have spiked because suddenly there was increased activity around me, but I barely noticed. My mother, the woman who had carried me for 9 months, who had supposedly loved me, was calmly suggesting they harvest my organs like I was spare parts. My father's voice joined in, matter-of-fact and cold. "Victoria's right. The girl will be fine with one kidney. People live perfectly normal lives. But Ethan, he's the future of this family. He has the Sterling legacy to carry on. Make it happen, doctor." "That's not how this works," the doctor said, his voice tight with disgust. "I cannot and will not." "She's our daughter," my mother interrupted. "We have the right to make medical decisions for her. She's only 17. And we're telling you, Ethan comes first. He's always come first. She's just a girl. She'll marry someday and become someone else's responsibility. But Ethan, he's a Sterling. He carries the family name." I wanted to scream, but I couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't do anything but lie there and feel my heart break into pieces so small they could never be put back together. The doctor refused, of course. But the damage was done. I had heard, with perfect clarity, exactly what I was worth to my parents. Less than my brother. Less than the family legacy. Less than nothing. For 3 more days, I remained in that ICU bed, drifting in and out of consciousness. Every time I woke, I heard similar conversations. My mother complaining about the inconvenience of my recovery, my father discussing Ethan's future, his business prospects, his potential. Not once did they speak to me with love. That night, during visiting hours, I made my decision. I waited until my parents left, then pressed the call button for the nurse. When they carefully removed my breathing tube, I whispered hoarsely, "I need social worker, Judith Martinez, please." The nurse's eyes widened with understanding. Every hospital in California knew Judith Martinez, a legend in child protective services. "Honey, are you sure? Your parents are trying to kill me," I whispered. "Please, I'm not safe here." 20 minutes later, a woman with steel gray hair and eyes that had seen too much entered my room. Judith Martinez looked exactly like her reputation suggested. Formidable, compassionate, and absolutely no nonsense. She pulled up a chair beside my bed, took out a small recording device, and said simply, "Tell me everything." And I did. Every word my parents had spoken. Every moment of neglect and favoritism throughout my 17 years. The accident, Ethan's abandonment, the attempt to take my kidney. Judith's expression never changed, but her hand tightened on her pen. "I'm going to need you to be very brave, Sarah," she said when I finished. "What I'm about to set in motion, there's no going back from it. Your parents will fight this. It will get ugly. Are you prepared for that?" I looked at her, this stranger offering me a lifeline, and felt something harden inside my chest. Something cold and sharp and utterly unbreakable. "My name isn't Sarah anymore," I said. "Sarah Sterling died in that car crash. Call me Iris." A small smile crossed Judith's face. "Iris. I like it. It means rainbow, something beautiful that comes after a storm." The legal battle was swift and merciless. Judith gathered evidence, hospital security footage, statements from Dr. Patterson and nurses who had witnessed my parents' behavior, medical records showing years of neglect in my health history compared to Ethan's pristine file of the best specialists money could buy. The emergency hearing took place while I was still in the hospital. When the judge played the security footage of my mother demanding my kidney, I watched my father's face. He didn't look ashamed. He looked annoyed at being caught. The judge's ruling was immediate. Emergency removal from parental custody, with temporary guardianship granted to Judith Martinez. My parents were barred from contacting me or coming within 500 feet. I looked them both in the eye and said clearly, "For the record, I, Sarah Elizabeth Sterling, formally reject my parents and my birth name. Effective immediately, I am Iris Chen. I choose my maternal grandmother's maiden name because she was the only person in this family who ever loved me." The judge approved my petition for legal name change on the spot. Sarah Sterling was officially dead. I left that courthouse in a wheelchair, Judith pushing me toward a future that terrified and exhilarated me in equal measure. Behind me, I heard my mother's voice, shrill with indignation. "You ungrateful little bitch. After everything we've done for you." I didn't turn around. Sarah might have. Sarah would have apologized, would have tried to make peace. But I wasn't Sarah anymore. I was Iris, and I was done apologizing for existing. Judith took me to her modest townhouse in Pasadena for recovery. She helped me track down my grandmother's trust fund. As I suspected, my parents had invested most of it in Ethan's education. What remained was just $12,000, but it was enough. It was a start. I threw myself into my GED studies with ferocity. 3 months after the accident, still walking with a slight limp, I took the test and passed with near-perfect scores. Judith helped me apply for scholarships. The story of the girl who sued her parents for trying to harvest her organs made local news, and it opened doors. I received a full scholarship to UCLA for computer science. College was a revelation. For the first time in my life, I was judged on my merits, not compared to Ethan. I discovered I was actually quite good at coding, at systems thinking, at solving complex problems. I worked part-time at a campus coffee shop, saved every penny, and invested it carefully. During my sophomore year, I created an app for small business scheduling and resource management. Within 6 months, it had 10,000 users. Within a year, 100,000. By the time I graduated, I was fielding acquisition offers from major tech companies. I sold the app for $4 million. I was 21 years old and a millionaire. But I wasn't done. I took $3 million and invested it in a startup founded by my former professors, becoming their COO. The company exploded. Our AI-driven logistics software revolutionized supply chain management for Fortune 500 companies. Within 3 years, we went public. My stake was worth $50 million. I was 25, and I was unstoppable. I bought a penthouse in downtown LA with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. I transformed myself from the broken girl in the hospital bed into someone powerful, someone formidable, someone who would never be anyone's second choice again. But I never forgot. Every success reminded me of them, and I wondered if they knew, if they'd heard about Iris Chen, the tech wunderkind, if they'd made the connection. I didn't have to wonder long. It was a Tuesday morning when the email appeared in my inbox. Our HR department had forwarded it as part of the standard C-suite review of executive-level candidates. The subject line read, VP of Sales Application, Ethan Sterling. I stared at that name for a full minute. Ethan, my brother, the golden child, was applying to work at my company. I pulled up my private investigator on speed dial. Marcus, I said, I need a full workup on Ethan Sterling. Everything. End of day. The report was illuminating. Sterling Enterprises was struggling. My father had made poor investments, expanded too aggressively. Several key clients had jumped ship. And Ethan? Ethan was the cause of at least 2 of those lost clients. He'd mishandled negotiations, made promises he couldn't keep. Ethan had applied to 17 other companies in the past 6 months. All 17 had rejected him. We were his last hope. I scheduled his interview for the following Friday. I wanted time to prepare, to plan exactly how this would go. I had my assistant book the largest conference room, the one with the panoramic view of Los Angeles. Friday arrived with brilliant California sunshine. I dressed carefully, a tailored black suit, red-soled Louboutins, and my grandmother's jade pendant. I positioned myself in the conference room, my back to the windows, so that whoever entered would have to look into the light to see me clearly. At precisely 2 p.m., my assistant opened the door. Miss Chen, your 2 o'clock is here. Send him in. Ethan Sterling walked into the room, confident and assured. He'd aged well, still handsome in that generic, privileged way. His suit was expensive, but slightly outdated. He had that same easy smile I remembered. Miss Chen, thank you so much for taking the time to... He stopped. The smile froze. The color drained from his face as recognition hit him. Sarah? His voice cracked. Sarah? You're alive? I let the silence stretch, watching him grapple with the impossibility. Then, slowly, I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. No, I said softly. Sarah's dead. I'm Iris. Please, sit down, Ethan. He stood there, frozen, his mouth opening and closing. I could see his mind racing, trying to piece together how the sister he'd left for dead was now in a position to interview him. I said, sit down. He's Saturday. The portfolio slipped from his grip, scattering papers across the table. You're surprised to see me alive? I asked. Or surprised that I'm not in some unmarked grave, the convenient organ donor for the Sterling family? I don't, Sarah, I didn't know. Didn't know what? Didn't know that Mom and Dad tried to harvest my kidney for you? Or did you mean you didn't know I survived being abandoned at a crash site? His face flushed. That's not fair. I was injured too. I was in shock. I laughed, cold and bitter. You had scratches, Ethan. Scratches. I had broken ribs, a punctured lung, internal bleeding, and I lost a kidney. But you were in shock. I walked to the windows. Do you want to know what I remember most clearly from that day? It's not the pain. It's not the fear of dying. It's looking into your eyes and seeing you calculate whether helping me was worth the inconvenience. That's not what happened. I whirled around. Don't you dare lie to me. I saw your face, Ethan. I saw you look at me, assess the situation, and decide I wasn't worth saving. You called 911 for yourself. Only yourself. His eyes dropped to the table. I was scared. I panicked. I'm sorry. Sorry, I tested the word. That's touching. Tell me, Ethan. Did it ever occur to you to stand up to Mom and Dad? When they wanted to cut me open and take my organs, did you say anything? Did you defend your little sister? The silence was answer enough. I picked up his resume. Let's talk about this. Stanford MBA. Impressive. Daddy's donations must have helped with that admission. 5 years at Sterling Enterprises. Let me guess. You were given a corner office and an inflated title while never actually having to perform? I worked hard. You coasted. I threw his resume down. I had my people look into you, Ethan. The clients you lost, the deals you botched, the projects that failed under your leadership. You're a disaster dressed up in a nice suit and a famous last name. His jaw clenched. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I, Meridian Tech? Lost because you promised implementation in 3 months when the standard timeline is 9. Cascade Industries. Gone because you couldn't be bothered to show up to a crucial pitch meeting. Should I go on? I leaned forward. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to reject your application, and then I'm going to make some calls. I know people at every major firm in this sector, and I'm going to personally ensure that not one of them hires you. The blood drained from his face. You can't do that. Can't I? I'm Iris Chen, Ethan. I'm one of the most successful executives in tech. When I make a recommendation, people listen. And when I tell them that Ethan Sterling is incompetent, unreliable, and coasted on Daddy's money his whole life, they'll believe me. This is insane. You can't destroy my career over something that happened when we were kids. When we were kids? My voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. Ethan, I was 17. You were 20. You weren't a child. You were an adult who made a choice, and now you get to live with the consequences. I walked to the door, opened it. This interview is over. Security will escort you out. And Ethan? If you or our parents try to contact me, I will destroy Sterling Enterprises so thoroughly that there won't be enough left to sell for scrap. Are we clear? He stumbled toward the door, then turned back. There were tears in his eyes. Sarah, we're family. We're blood. You can't just… Blood? You want to talk about blood? I bled alone in that car while you saved yourself. I bled on an operating table while Mom and Dad argued over my spare parts. I bled myself dry, building a life from nothing while you coasted on a name I rejected. So don't you dare talk to me about blood. I signaled to the security guard. Please escort Mr. Sterling from the building. He's no longer welcome here. As they led him away, I heard him calling back, Please, Sarah, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, we need this. The company is failing, I have nothing left, please. I closed the door on his pleas. My hands were shaking. My heart was racing. I had won. I had faced him and proved that I was stronger, smarter, more successful. But it didn't feel the way I'd imagined. It didn't heal the wound. Over the next few weeks, I made good on my promise. Word spread quietly through the industry. Ethan Sterling was untouchable. His LinkedIn profile gradually deleted any mention of looking for new opportunities. But I wasn't done. Ethan was just the symptom. Sterling Enterprises was the disease, and my parents were the virus at its heart. I started digging deeper, using private investigators and forensic accountants. What I found was illuminating. Sterling Enterprises wasn't just struggling. It was built on questionable deals, creative accounting, and business practices that skirted legality. My father had been cooking the books for years, inflating asset values to secure loans, hiding debts in shell companies, paying bribes to secure government contracts. I assembled my evidence carefully. Financial records, testimony from former employees, paper trails leading to offshore accounts. I built an ironclad case and waited for the perfect moment. That moment came 6 months later. Sterling Enterprises announced a major merger with a European conglomerate. It was supposed to be my father's crowning achievement, the deal that would cement the Sterling legacy for generations. The day before the merger was set to close, I sent my evidence to the SEC, the FBI, and every major financial news outlet. I also sent it to the European company's board of directors. The response was immediate and devastating. The merger collapsed within hours. The European company pulled out, threatening lawsuits for fraud. The SEC launched a formal investigation. The FBI showed up at Sterling Enterprises with warrants. The stock price plummeted. Within a month, Sterling Enterprises filed for bankruptcy. My father faced multiple federal charges. My mother, complicit in the fraud, was named in several lawsuits. Their assets were frozen, their mansion seized, their reputation destroyed. Ethan, unemployable and toxic by association, moved back in with them just as they were forced to sell the house and move into a modest apartment in the valley. I watched it all unfold from my office, each development bringing a grim satisfaction. They had tried to reduce me to spare parts. Now they had nothing. But my final move came a year later, at a charity gala I was hosting. The event was massive, held at the Beverly Hills Hotel, with celebrities, tech moguls, and philanthropists in attendance. I was the keynote speaker, launching a foundation to support children escaping abusive family situations. As I stood at the podium, I spotted them in the crowd. My parents and Ethan, dressed in their best remaining clothes, trying desperately to blend in, to network, to claw back some semblance of their former status. They'd been reduced to charity cases, hoping to make connections. I began my speech, my voice carrying across the ballroom. I stand before you tonight as living proof that your worth is not determined by the family you're born into. I was once told I was just a girl, that my life mattered less than my brother's. I was told I was disposable, a resource to be used and discarded. I paused, letting my eyes sweep across the audience until they landed on my parents. Recognition dawned on their faces, horror following close behind. But I survived, and I thrived. Not because of my family, but in spite of them. This foundation exists to help children who, like I once was, are trapped in families that see them as less than human. Children who deserve advocates, who deserve justice, who deserve to know that their lives have value. I saw my mother's face crumble, my father's expression harden with rage, Ethan's eyes fill with tears. Tonight, we're not just raising money, we're raising awareness. We're saying that no child should be sacrificed for a sibling, no daughter should be valued less than a son, no person should be reduced to their usefulness to others. The applause was thunderous. People stood, moved by the message. My parents remained seated, frozen in their humiliation. After the speech, I descended from the stage. The crowd parted naturally, donors and supporters approaching to shake my hand, to pledge their support. And then, there they were, my family, blocking my path. Ethan stepped forward first, his face pale. Sarah, Iris, please, can we talk? I looked at him, really looked at him. He was thinner now, worn down by failure and consequence. There was genuine desperation in his eyes. Talk about what, Ethan? How you need money, how the family is struggling, how you want me to forgive and forget. My mother pushed forward, her voice sharp even in defeat. How dare you air our private matters publicly? How dare you destroy this family? I laughed, short and bitter. I destroyed this family? No, Mother. You destroyed this family the moment you decided I was worth less than Ethan. You destroyed it when you tried to harvest my organs like I was livestock. I simply refused to die quietly. My father, always the businessman, tried a different approach. Iris, we made mistakes. We admit that, but we're still family. Surely we can come to some arrangement. You're successful now. You could help us rebuild. Help you rebuild? I stared at him in disbelief. You want me to fund the same people who tried to butcher me? Who saw me as spare parts? Who told me I was worthless? I stepped closer, my voice dropping so only they could hear. Here's the arrangement. You stay away from me. You never speak my name. You never tell anyone we're related. You live with the consequences of your choices, just as I had to live with mine. The difference is, I built something beautiful from the ashes. You'll just have ashes. My mother's face twisted with rage. You vindictive little. Careful, I warned. You're at my event. In a room full of my friends, my colleagues, my supporters. One word from me and security will remove you. One word to the press about who you really are, and the rest of your lives will be even more miserable. Ethan grabbed my arm, desperate. Please, Iris, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was a coward, I know that now. But please, you're my sister. I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back at his face. I was your sister. Sarah was your sister. And you let her bleed out in a wrecked car because saving her was inconvenient. Iris owes you nothing. I pulled my arm free and looked at all three of them one last time. This is your legacy. This shame, this failure, this is what the Sterling name means now. And every time you look in the mirror, every time you struggle to pay rent or put food on the table, I want you to remember that girl in the hospital bed. Remember what you tried to take from her. Remember that she survived, and she won. I turned and walked away, my head held high. Behind me I heard my mother's voice, shrill and furious, calling me ungrateful, calling me cruel. But her words couldn't touch me anymore. They had no power. As I rejoined the gala, accepting congratulations and discussing the foundation's future, I felt something shift inside me. Not quite peace, but something close to it. A sense of completion. I had faced them, had shown them exactly what they'd thrown away, and I had emerged victorious. The foundation launched successfully, raising millions that first night. Over the following years, it would help thousands of children escape toxic family situations, providing legal support, counseling, and resources. Every child we saved felt like a small redemption, a way to transform my pain into something meaningful. I heard through the grapevine that my father eventually went to prison for fraud. My mother worked as a receptionist at a dentist's office. Ethan moved across the country, trying to escape the Sterling name that had become synonymous with scandal and failure. I never saw them again. 10 years after that gala, I stood in my penthouse, looking out at the glittering Los Angeles skyline. I was 35, CEO of my own company, respected in my industry, genuinely happy. I had built a life that was entirely mine, untainted by their influence, unmarred by their rejection. Sometimes, late at night, I still thought about that car crash. About the girl trapped in the wreckage, calling for help that never came. But she seemed like a different person now, a character from someone else's story. Sarah Sterling died on that highway, yes. But from her death, something stronger was born. Something that refused to be diminished, refused to be valued by others' standards, refused to accept that love came with conditions and sacrifices. I was Iris. I had bloomed in the aftermath of the storm. And I had built a garden where others like me could bloom too. That was my revenge. Not just their destruction, but my absolute, undeniable success. They wanted me to be nothing, so I became everything. They wanted me to disappear, so I made sure the world would never forget my name. And in the end, the greatest victory wasn't bringing them down. It was lifting myself up so high that they couldn't touch me, couldn't hurt me, couldn't matter to me anymore. I was free. Finally, completely free. And that freedom was worth more than any revenge could ever be.